Don't speak!
The words trembled from her lips, barely louder than the hum of the streetlights. The homeless black woman's eyes widened as she crouched behind a trash bin, her ragged coat pulled tight around her. Moments earlier, she had heard it. Two men in the shadows, whispering about something unthinkable. A plan, a target, and then she heard a name. The name of a man who carried stars on his shoulders, a man whose decisions could alter the fate of nations, a 4-star general. Her heart pounded. She had nothing, no home, no family, not even a voice in the world that people cared to hear. Yet in this instant, she alone carried the weight of a secret that could end a life in seconds. The irony was chilling. She was invisible to society, dismissed by every passerby, and yet she had just become the only shield standing between one of the most powerful men in the country and certain death. The general walked closer, unaware of the danger stalking him, each step taking him nearer to the trap. And the woman, trembling in her worn shoes, knew she had one choice: remain silent and watch disaster unfold, or risk everything to stop it. But what could a homeless woman possibly do to protect a man the entire nation trusted to protect them? By day, most people passed her without even a glance. She was just another forgotten figure on the city's crowded sidewalks. A homeless black woman wrapped in layers of mismatched clothing, her hair hidden beneath a faded scarf, her hands calloused from surviving the cold. She knew the rhythm of the streets better than anyone, the rush of morning commuters, the silence of empty alleys at night, the indifference in the eyes of strangers who tossed coins without ever looking at her face. Her name was Lila, though few cared enough to ask. Once she had dreamed of becoming a teacher, of shaping young minds. But life had been unkind, jobs lost, doors closed, and one tragedy after another had left her with nothing but a cardboard mat to sleep on. Even then, she carried herself with a quiet dignity. She watched the world with an attentiveness born of survival, noticing things others ignored. That night was no different, or so it seemed. She had found her usual spot near a dim streetlight, listening to the city's noises, the rumble of buses, the laughter from bars, the footsteps of late-night travelers. But then, hidden beneath the hum of the night, came voices that didn't belong, low, deliberate plotting. She leaned closer, straining to catch the words. At first, she thought it was ordinary trouble, petty criminals planning a robbery. But as the voices sharpened, a chill spread through her chest. This wasn't about money. This was about power, destruction, and a target whose name made her blood run cold. A 4-star general scheduled to pass that very street within minutes. For the first time in years, Lila's invisibility became her strength. They hadn't noticed her. No one ever did. And now, she realized, she had the chance to stop something terrible before it happened. The words echoed in Lila's ears like the tolling of a dark bell. She crouched lower against the cold brick wall, her breath misting in the night air. Her hands trembled, not from the chill this time, but from the realization of what she had just overheard. "They'll never see it coming," one voice muttered, gruff and confident. "The general passes here every week," another answered. "Tonight, he won't make it back." Her heart pounded. A 4-star general. She didn't know his name, didn't know his history, but she understood enough. This wasn't some street fight. This was a planned attack, one that could ripple through the country like wildfire, and she was the only one who knew. For a long moment, Lila froze, torn between instincts. Part of her screamed to stay silent, to shrink further into the shadows, to pretend she had heard nothing. After all, who would believe her? A homeless woman, ragged and forgotten. She had spent years being invisible. Now, when she finally had something to say, why would anyone listen? But another part of her, the part that had once dreamed of standing in front of a classroom, protecting children, guiding them, rose up with unexpected force. If she stayed quiet, someone powerful would die. Perhaps more than one. Perhaps many more, if the attack spiraled out of control. Her body shook as she forced herself to stand. The men's voices faded down the alley as they moved toward their positions, confident in their anonymity. They didn't know she existed. That was her chance. Lila stepped out from her corner, her bare shoes scraping against the pavement. Every sound seemed amplified. The rustle of her coat, the faint tap of her footsteps. She glanced over her shoulder, terrified they might notice. But they were too focused on their target. She hurried toward the main street. The night felt heavier now, every shadow stretching like it wanted to pull her back. She could already see the approaching motorcade, just a few black SUVs and a single sedan at the center, not flashy but unmistakably important. Her chest tightened. How do I stop this? She couldn't just run into the middle of the road. Armed guards would push her aside before she uttered a word. And yet, if she didn't act quickly, it would be too late. Her eyes darted around, searching desperately, and then she spotted him. The general himself, stepping out of the sedan for a brief moment to greet a waiting officer. Tall, broad-shouldered, his uniform sharp even under the dim streetlights. He radiated authority, the kind of presence that made people instinctively straighten their backs. Lila's breath caught in her throat. This was it, the man she had to save. But how? She took a step forward, then another, until she was close enough for the guards to notice. One of them moved instantly, hand raised to block her path. "Back away, ma'am," he ordered firmly. Panic surged through her veins. She tried to speak, but the words tangled on her tongue. The guard's stern face only heightened her fear. Then she forced herself to whisper, hoarse but urgent. "Don't speak. Just listen. They're going to kill him." The guard stiffened. His eyes narrowed as though he were about to dismiss her. But something in her expression, her shaking hands, her raw desperation, made him pause. He leaned closer. "What did you say?" Lila's words spilled out, broken but frantic. She described the men, the alley, the plan she had overheard. She didn't know every detail, but she knew enough. The time, the place, the fact that it was happening now. The guard's eyes flickered toward the general, then back at her. For a heartbeat, she thought he would shove her away. But instead, he raised a hand to his earpiece, speaking quickly into the mic. Within seconds, the atmosphere shifted. Soldiers who had seemed calm a moment ago suddenly moved with sharp precision, scanning rooftops, corners, every shadowed angle of the street. The general himself noticed the change and turned, his gaze following the guard's sudden tension, but the threat wasn't waiting patiently. A flicker of movement caught Lila's eye. A man emerging from the alley, his hand hidden beneath his jacket, his posture stiff with intent. She felt the scream rising in her chest, but her throat caught again. "No, not now!" "He has to hear me." Her voice finally broke free, louder than she thought possible. "Behind you!" Chaos erupted. The man lunged forward, weapon flashing. Guards tackled him before he could raise it, their shouts filling the night. Another figure tried to bolt from the alley but was quickly pinned to the ground. The general didn't flinch. Instead, he studied the scene with a measured calm, then turned his eyes toward Lila. In that moment, their gazes locked. His, steady and commanding. Hers, trembling but unyielding. The world spun around her, sirens blaring, boots pounding, orders shouted, but all Lila could think was, "They heard me. I saved him. I actually saved him," but she didn't yet realize. Her night was only beginning. The night exploded into chaos. Screams rose from every direction as the attackers fought with wild desperation, their carefully planned ambush collapsing into panic. Guards shouted orders, pulling the general toward cover, but the fight spilled too close, too fast. Lila stood frozen at the edge of the street, her heart hammering so hard it rattled her chest. She had never seen such violence up close, men grappling, fists striking, the flash of steel as one attacker swung a hidden blade. A guard cried out, blood spilling down his arm, and then she saw it. One man, different from the rest, hung back near the alley. His movements were calm, deliberate, too deliberate. He wasn't rushing like the others. He was waiting, biding his time, his eyes locked on the general. Lila's stomach dropped. "He's the real threat." Her voice caught in her throat again, but she forced it free. "There's another one!" she screamed, pointing wildly, but in the chaos, no one looked her way. The guards were busy pinning down the men already caught. The general himself, shielded behind a wall of soldiers, hadn't seen the shadow moving closer. The man drew something from his coat. Not a knife, not a gun, something small, black, metallic, an improvised detonator. Lila's blood ran cold. This wasn't just an assassination, this was an explosion. If he pressed that button, everyone here, the general, the guards, the bystanders on the street, would be torn apart. She didn't think. She didn't plan. She moved. Her bare shoes slapped against the pavement as she sprinted across the street. The man's eyes widened when he saw her, surprise flashing across his face. For an instant, he hesitated. That was all she needed. She slammed into him with all the force her thin body could muster. They crashed into the alley wall, his hand jolting upward, the device clattering to the ground. "Get off me!" he snarled, twisting violently. He was stronger, far stronger. His elbow smashed into her ribs, white-hot pain exploding through her side. She gasped, but clung tighter, clawing at his wrist, desperate to keep his hand away from the detonator. For a terrifying second, he reached it again, his fingers brushing the device. Lila bit down on his hand, hard enough to draw blood. He roared in pain, yanking his arm free, but in that split second, she kicked the detonator across the pavement. The guards finally noticed. "Over there!" one shouted, but the man wasn't done. With a guttural cry, he swung a heavy punch that connected with Lila's face, sending her sprawling onto the ground. Stars burst in her vision, her cheek blazing with pain. She tasted blood. The attacker lunged for the detonator again. Lila's vision blurred, but she saw it glinting under the streetlight, just out of his reach. Summoning every ounce of strength left in her battered body, she threw herself forward, sliding across the pavement and grabbing it first. The man's shadow loomed over her, his boot slamming down toward her chest. She rolled, clutching the device to her stomach, gasping in pain as his heel missed by inches. "Give it to me," he bellowed. Her mind screamed at her to run, to drop it, to protect herself. But another voice inside her rose louder, the same voice that had told her not to stay silent, not this time. She forced herself to her knees, raising the detonator high above her head. And with a cry that tore from the depths of her soul, she smashed it against the pavement. The casing cracked. Sparks flew. The device shattered into useless pieces. The man froze, horror spreading across his face, and then the soldiers were there, tackling him to the ground, forcing his arms behind his back as he fought like a cornered animal. Their shouts drowned his curses, their boots pinning him down until he had no fight left. Lila collapsed to the ground, her breath ragged, her body shaking from pain and exhaustion. The world around her blurred into fragments, shouts, sirens, the metallic taste of blood in her mouth. And then, through the storm, she heard a calm, commanding voice. "Bring her to me." The soldiers lifted her gently, supporting her battered frame. They guided her toward the general, who stood tall in the middle of the chaos, his uniform immaculate despite the turmoil. His eyes were steady, piercing, the kind of gaze that seemed to see everything at once. For the first time, Lila felt the weight of what she had done. She, a homeless woman invisible to the world, had just stopped an attack that could have killed one of the most powerful men in the country. The general looked at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he extended his hand. "You saved my life," he said simply. His voice wasn't just grateful, it was respectful, as if he were speaking to an equal. Tears stung Lila's eyes. Her throat tightened, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was from the realization that, for once, someone truly saw her. The sirens wailed louder as police swarmed the scene, dragging the attackers away. But all Lila could hear was the echo of the general's words. "You saved my life." And in that moment, broken and bloodied though she was, Lila felt something she hadn't in years. Pride. The night had finally quieted, though the air still carried the acrid tang of smoke and fear. The attackers were gone, hauled away in handcuffs, their weapons sealed in evidence bags. But the street where it had all unfolded was scarred by the chaos. Overturned trash cans, shattered glass, streaks of blood on the pavement. Lila sat on the back bumper of an ambulance, her hands trembling as a medic dabbed antiseptic across her bruised cheek. She winced but didn't complain. For someone who had survived years on the streets, a swollen face and aching ribs were just another chapter in a long book of pain. And yet, this time it felt different. This time, She hadn't just survived. She had made a difference. The crowd that had gathered now buzzed with whispers, their eyes darting toward her. Some pointed, others shook their heads in disbelief. It wasn't the general or the soldiers drawing their attention. It was her. For once, she wasn't invisible. The general stepped forward, his polished boots clicking against the asphalt. Even battered, Lila straightened when he stopped in front of her. He removed his cap, a rare gesture of humility, and held it at his side. "You may have saved more than my life tonight," he said, his voice firm but warm. "You may have saved this entire city." Lila's throat tightened. Words fought to rise, but the old instinct to remain silent clung to her. Then she remembered the moment in the alley, when she had forced herself to speak, to scream, and realized silence no longer defined her. I just did what I had to," she whispered. The general studied her for a long moment, then turned to one of his aides. "Make sure she's taken care of. Tonight she leaves this street behind." Shock rippled through the medics and soldiers nearby. Lila's eyes widened, tears threatening to spill. "Leave the street behind? Did he mean?" The aide nodded briskly, already pulling out a phone to make calls. Lila suddenly felt the ground shift beneath her, not literally, but in her life. A door she had believed forever locked had creaked open. As dawn painted the horizon in pale gold, the ambulance drove her not to another cold shelter, but to a safe place chosen by the general's people. A warm bed, clean clothes, the first hot meal she hadn't begged for in years, all waiting for her. She lay awake that morning, staring at the ceiling, her body aching, but her heart alive with something new. Hope. For the first time in a long time, she believed tomorrow might hold more than hunger and survival. She had been invisible once. Now she was the woman who had saved a 4-star general, and in doing so, saved herself.